Hello again. Our next panel subject is a hot topic. We will discuss new challenges in the sports industry and the impact of digital assets on sports clubs. We have several valuable guests. First of all, let me introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Ceyhun Kazancı, General Manager of Pasolik Turkey.
Değerli katılımcılar, spor endüstrisinin profesyonelleri, bu yıl 11'incisi düzenlenen Boğaziçi...
Distinguished guests and professionals of the sports industry, welcome to our session titled Future New Challenges in the Sports Industry, the Impact of Digital Assets on Sports Clubs. As you know, the digital transformation has also reflected on the sports industry. Stadiums have been turned into digital stadiums. New technologies are being used for broadcasting games. We are using the impact of the social media, and we use artificial intelligence. And as technology develops, the sports industry develops as well. With the pandemic, this process has been accelerated. We have accelerated the digitalization of the components of the sports industry outside the stadiums. And the virtual tickets are the first examples of this. In Germany, in Bundesliga, the virtual tickets were sold in a few minutes and they were sold out. And the game effects in FIFA games have been added with the technology because the audience was not admitted to the stadiums because of the pandemic. And in the pandemic, the social media was used more to follow athletes. And with their content, the athletes became the winners of this pandemic. And the top football leagues around the world have doubled their digital interaction. And the content packages and new digital platforms have been started during this process. And Barcelona created additional revenues by adding new content in its channel. And Chelsea invested in the digital platforms, and it also offered the paid nutrition services for athletes. And we have seen many digital applications in the sports industry. In the game economy, the investments in the digital assets is increasing every day. There are more than 30 million gamers in Turkey. The total volume is more than $1 billion US, and the esports will be the main competitor of football in the future. And the football clubs are also aware of that, and they are creating their own esports teams. And there is a fierce competition among the sports clubs. They are not only competing in the pitches, but also with innovation and digital investments. These global sports teams are hiring digital marketing experts and artificial intelligence experts, just like Manchester, because this is where the world is going. This football is digitalizing, and this is not stoppable. And one of the sports is becoming in sports. These digital tools are becoming one of the most important parameters, and cryptocurrencies are also being used more in the sports industry. In many European teams and Turkish teams are using award platforms and fan interaction platforms using these cryptocurrencies. And these are the clues of interactive communication with the fans. Now the clubs are trying to have a closer relationship with their fans. And the main theme of this session is the digital assets, and these assets will become an indispensable component of the sports industry in the future. And with the panelists, we will be discussing the impact of the digital assets on sports clubs. I would like to pass the floor to the moderator, Dr. Ural Aküzüm.
Thank you, Mr. Kazancı. Now, to lead our panel, please welcome on stage Dr. Ural Aküzüm, ICP Executive Board Member, Turkey.
Evet, konuşmacı arkadaşlarımızı da alalım.
Okay, we can invite the panelists. Burak Elmas, Bora Koçyiğit, Altuğ Öztürk,
Ve sevgili dostumuz
and who is missing? Ceyhun is here, and the other panelist is Armando Guastella. Yes, distinguished participants, welcome to our session. As the International Cooperation Platform, we are organizing the 11th edition of this conference, and we once again have very valuable guests. We will be talking about the impact of digital assets on sports clubs, and we have valuable panelists who will be sharing their professional knowledge as well as their opinion about the economical developments in this area. As you know, we have been involved in the sports industry for many years, and we are seeing there is a transformation here in the last 15 years with the development of the internet, digital assets, esports, and social media. The management of sports clubs has changed. Their economical structure has changed. And in the US, the Security Exchange Commission estimates that in 2025, the digital assets, the balance sheets will be included in the sports clubs in the future. This is very important, and without spending more time, I would like to pass the floor to the former executive of Galatasaray and my dear friend, international entrepreneur, who is the former CEO of the Godiva, a major chocolate manufacturer. So you have 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Dr. Ural. I would like to welcome all participants. The world is going through a significant change. In the past, us and all consumers are now faced with a digital life. Now we are living most of our lives in the digital environment. All companies, all institutions are adapting to this new digital life of their consumers. Of course, the sports industry is affected by this. The main problem is that in management of sports, this digital transformation is segregated. So starting a social media account is only a minor component of this big transformation. To the end, this digital transformation should be managed end to end under the comprehensive sales strategy. Here, we have the digital assets and data, which are very important for us. Sports clubs, when making decisions, should leverage the data. Decisions about their trainings or when recruiting new players, they can use the data to inform these decisions, and who do not do that will be lagging behind, because we need to use information very strongly to avoid any mistakes. And on the other side, there is a change brought by digitalization in the way of communication between the fans and sports clubs. The fans now know more about their clubs, and the clubs know more about their fans. And this is something brought by the digital transformation, the better use of data, making good decisions informed by data. And the fans also have a bigger share in this world. And at this point, I believe Galatasaray has many strengths in this area. I think it will be the leader in this area. So we are going into a new era, and the clubs that will not adapt to this era, which ignore this digital transformation, will be running behind. And the clubs which adapt to this digital transformation, which use database assets, can adapt them to their management methods and thus increase their revenues.
Geleneksel spor yöneticiliği bölümünde oldu, hem de yeni dönemde oldu. En son geçtiğimiz şampiyon olduğumuz yıl Sportif AŞ'nin, Galatasaray Sportif AŞ'nin yönetimindeydi. Uluslararası bir yöneticilik tecrübesinden de damıtarak görüşlerini söyledi. Teşekkür ederiz Burak Elmas'a. Şimdi sırada sevgili Altuğ Öztürk var. Altuğ Öztürk dünyanın
Now it's Altuğ Öztürk. He's been working with the most prestigious teams in the world, and he has actually made a change in the digital assets of those teams. And also within Galatasaray, he is the Turkish director of Socios. And of course, Socio is catering towards the students and the internet users. So it has made an important entry into the Turkish market. So, from Mr. Altuğ and his own career journey, how are those digital assets in a communication with those consumers, Turkish football, and what kind of cooperations are waiting ahead for Turkish football? And we'd like to hear from him, his opinion. Mr. Altuğ, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for your invitation. It's an honor for me to be here. I'll talk about myself first. I'm Altuğ Öztürk. I'm only 29 years old yet. So my career started in Canada, then it went to Australia, and then to Norway. I studied sports administration, and it's about developing local clubs and creating communities. So while I was doing my master's degree, I wrote my master's thesis on the value that blockchain might create on football clubs. So I had just met blockchain. Bitcoin was just $600. Then now it's around $53,000. First, I was interested. I was attracted by the price, but then I started to do certain developments, business developments. I established a company in Turkey, and it's one of the first blockchain lenders in Turkey. And due to the difficulties, challenges we had, that was in 2017, and blockchain was not known by then. So due to chance, and we started to be renowned in Twitter. And then I met CEO of our company, Alex. And Alex was looking for ways to enter Turkey. He hadn't signed the agreement with Galatasaray yet. And there's Doruk İpekçi at Galatasaray. We met him through blockchain. And I was working on a project called Soko, not Socios. So how can we invest digital money, and how can we get inside the sector of blockchain was his question. So we had certain talks with him. And then I found myself inside Socios. We had met Alex through Twitter, and so it's basically digital communication. He lives in Malta. There's no possibility that I meet him face to face. He sent me a message, and then I found myself working with him. And now in Turkey, Galatasaray, Trabzonspor, Istanbul Başakşehir, and Göztepe Sports Club are the clubs that I work with. Abroad, Barcelona, Juventus, Saint-Germain, AC Milan, Fortuna Stad are the clubs that we work with. Let me talk to you about the job that we do. Socios means partners and community. It comes from the Barcelona and Real Madrid's culture of membership, and it takes that as a model. So the fans, the supporters who are now remote from their clubs due to the pandemic, no one can go to the stadium. But we were actually catering to the crowd inside the stadium. So 90% of the community, now we can cater to 100% of them. So make those supporters, fans meet their club, and thus make them gain awards. Doing that. Now we have more than 500,000 users. That's an application that's only a year and a half old. And now the feedback that we take from the clubs are changing. At first, we went through among the challenges that we went through, it was an unknown realm. What's crypto money? What is blockchain? So they wanted to watch it from a distance. But with the leadership of Galatasaray in Turkey, we were able to enter that field. And with the vision of Trabzonspor, it continued. And now we're at a stage where the clubs had a really small gain from it. They started to be now excited about what they gained from here, because now it can be unexpected numbers. And so our own crypto money, which is created for the entertainment sector, now its value is $1 billion, and that happened yesterday. So when I first entered, its value was $50-60 million, and yesterday it became $1 billion. So this is an amazing thing to see, and also it's amazing that the clubs really monitor that closely. And through time, this bridge that we have created shall develop even more. We have to think about it like it's like we're moving forward with a vehicle that's slower, but then we shall start proceeding on highways, and our vehicle shall move faster. So we did a voting inside Galatasaray with the tokens that were created. It was to create a bridge between the supporters and the club, and basically to give a word to the supporter about their club. So we basically opened certain elections and votings for the supporters. What did Trabzonspor do in its first voting? They changed the design of the team bus. Bolon Limassol is a club, for example, in Lake Cups, and the first 11 was selected for a preparation match, and they won this match with 6-0. So that was an incredible experience for us. When more and more teams start clubs using those implementations, I'll give my final example is from Barcelona. On Messi's captain badge, there was a sentence written by one of the supporters. So he started the match by Messi reading what was written on that badge. So did Barcelona and Real Madrid make money from this? When are they going to make money from this? We would like to hear from that also. Trabzonspor gained $10 million in 5 months, and the first sale happened in 5 minutes, and it was $1 million. And now we have 20 fan tokens in our ecosystem, and the total amount is $270 million. So the $44 million belong to Galatasaray. At the first, there is Barcelona with $80 million. So these ranks do not reflect the money that they make. This is basically market value, as you know. So with the token value, you multiply it with its market, with its presence in the market, and then you get the market value. So now all of the clubs are gaining more than $1 million. So since we are a new in entrepreneurship and incentive, this is basically the first steps. It's at its infancy period. So for Barcelona, how much did we sell? It was about $3.5 million of real money. So that was in their cashier, right? We also had a commission, a profit. So the not 3.5 millions entered their cash. Probably now, by now, entered more than that. With Milan, for example, we did $6 million of sales. Of course, Mr. Alto comes from a younger generation, so we have a difficulty like, where is the money? Where did you put it? But of course, we understand with that kind of information that we receive from him. So the panelists can also interfere and share their opinions. So we have a liberal panel here, panel discussion here. Now it is Mr. Bora Korçi's turn. Bora, Mr. Bora is one of the leaders of the game system. He has a background from the media, and he had very lots of senior administrative position. And now he is an entrepreneur in this ecosystem. In the companies where he has been a CEO, he has the role of introducing this thing to Turkey, and he is quite popular in this field. And in Galatasaray, he is at the Department of Esport. So it's clear that the world is going towards that. Everyone's children is adopting those things. So that these digital assets impact on the sports club. Now he shall talk to us about his journey and his opinion of the sea. Hello, everyone. It was a wonderful introduction by Mr. Vural. So I'll tell how I started from that sector to the game sector. I started my career at the treasury department of a bank. I worked there for 4 years. But then I was at the sports and media side. So in 2014, it was Digiturk. Now it's Buying Sports. So I was working at the sports rights department, and then I became the co-president in the 2017. So all the sports contents and their rights, my role was to lead the rights of all the sports content. So the relationship with the third parties such as UEFA, Wimbledon, EuroLeague, and the clubs. And I was leading all sorts of relationships. And in 2014, when on my 10th year at Digiturk League TV, I had a request for an interview from a company. So since I was leading the publication broadcast rights, so the esport side is growing, especially from high school onwards. I have been really familiar with the games. So probably they will try to sell me the broadcast rights of this game. But actually, I was offered a job at that interview. So I told them, oh, here's what I do in the sports sector. So what am I going to do in the games sector? You'll do whatever you do in the sports sector in this sector, they told me. So I did a little bit of research, and then I saw that esports is basically the professionalized side of the game sector, and it is coming towards today with a huge acceleration. So the Riot Games, I started to work at the Turkey branch of Riot Games. So what they wanted from us was like, we want to grow esports in Turkey. There was already esports in Turkey, but it was just the university tournament. So we want to grow this sector. How can we do it? And as the first project, and with the network that I had from the sports side, I started to motivate. I thought that it would be right to motivate the sports club. And so we started working on this. Galatasaray, Fenerbahçe, and Beşiktaş, we told these clubs at the managerial level, at the administrative level, what this project that we were doing amounts to. So Galatasaray established the individual, the esports branch. So that wasn't basically as a branch that was established as a result of a board meeting, but they did it as a matter of a meeting that an agreement that they signed. But then afterwards, Galatasaray, with the General Assembly decision, they made it a branch, and that was also the first. And then Barcelona, Schalke, and Juventus, all of the Premier League teams started to follow this, and all of them established their esport branches, and it became much more professional in Turkey. Esports became much more professional. For example, Riot Games, that I used to work with by then, has an arena now, and this arena is a place. Prior to the COVID, thousands of people were gathering there to watch the game, and so we had 15,000. We did it in basketball halls of 15,000 people, and so these tickets of 50 liras of value were becoming sold out in 2-3 hours. So there is huge growth in this sector. I'm also a member myself at Galatasaray, so I'll give the example from there. Galatasaray Esports basically dropped down from the cyclist, and then they lost like 700,000 profit. So in the amateur branches, there are huge costs. So this was basically a field that made us gain money while we were downgrading. So while I was working at while we were being relegated, and then the question was, how can we do this side more interactive, like a second screen? People shouldn't just watch the game and close it down, turn it off. People should be engaged for a longer term. So but as in its nature, it is already an interactive field, and it is born in the digital sector. Millions of people, as Mr. Jang stated, there are 30 million players, according to the researches that the Ministry of Sports did, and its economics is $1 billion. And when we look at the world, this has a huge scale. It is exceeding $160 billion in the sector of games. So parallel to the growth in the game sector, esports sector is also growing, and of course the increase of the younger generation, and that the former players are becoming parents now, and they are motivating their children to play. So this basically increases the numbers. Esports is the sports of today. There are incredible economic values being created. There are certain players who take $3 to $4 million, and certain Turkish players are also signing teams. There are clubs that do exclusively esports that have budgets of $300-400 million. So Turkey is one of the pioneers in this field because we have a really huge youth population, and I do believe that esports in Turkey shall be proud of its successes in the near future. Thank you very much, Mr. Bora Koçyiğit. So you have basically gave us important numbers about the game industry, and it is higher than the total sum of the 4 biggest clubs, the game industry. But yes, it is so. But game industry involves everything, like the smart games, games on smartphones. So yes, it's exceeding $1 million. So, but when we look at the numbers, we can see that it's coming. Throughout the pandemic, this increased greatly. The data is showing us that it increased greatly. And so in that, what kind of an opportunity will that create for the clubs? While Galatasaray was relegating, they still did profit. It was a game called League of Legends. So we only know about the football games of the games, but there's also that side. So now it is Mr. Armando Gestalla's turn.
Company, and he has a great career as a football player. In late 90s, he was playing for Rome, Italy, with Del Vecchio, with Francesco Totti, with great players. And then he made a career change. After working for companies such as KPMG, he succeeds in becoming a partner in Bain Company. As you may know, it's one of the most prestigious, important consulting company in all around the world. So Armando has great experiences on football player side and company and consultancy side. Please, the floor is yours, Armando.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me in this very emotional panel for me, in the sense that it's a combination of two sides of my life and my career. I mean, as Ural was mentioning, a football career and a professional career. I may say emotional because I come from a world in which, especially in football, but in sport in general, the kind of monetization was much more difficult. And I still remember the moment in which TV rights was sold for the first time in the 90s, and then football clubs were able to increase absurdly the salaries of their players. A lot of things have been done over the years, and digital, of course, was the main disruption of the industry. And I would say the benefits have been seen by everybody. I will not say just in terms of salaries for the player, which is a debate that always is raising, but also in terms of stability of the companies, because as we were saying about clubs that were relegating, 20 years ago, a club that relegated was actually very easy to going back through and failing, while right now there are other revenue streams that allow the club to be absolutely stable. I would say that I would like to talk about the potential improvement that actually happened in the performance of the club, so in the core team, but also on the commercial standpoint. Starting from the performance, having been the opportunity to grow in the youth team of Roma, I can say that for sure digitalization had a double impact. First of all, in terms of scouting. Right now we have platforms like Y-Scout that allow just sitting in the house, the talent scout to see all around the world who are the talents, what we can engage, and potentially the pool of talents is much bigger than before, providing the same opportunities for people living in Italy, living in China, living in Middle East, and so on and so forth. In addition, of course, with the increase of digitalization, we are also able to better understand the dynamics on the football pitch. So this is also improving the kind of performance of the individual player. And even, I can say my fiancée, she's a cardiologist, I can say that there are a lot of lives that can be saved right now because there is a much better screening of the heart disease that can happen for players. And unfortunately, the cases of people that was dying were increasing, and now we have a much better monitoring of this kind of thing. So it's also a matter of save. Going to a commercial standpoint, I would say that the revenue streams are more or less the same. No, I mean, everybody knows we have a match day, we have commercial, and we have broadcasting. However, with the digital transformation, all the three streams have been completely changed. Starting from the match days, now we see a trend in which the stadium are becoming smaller, are becoming, unfortunately, even the ticketing is becoming higher, but the kind of services that are provided to the fan base, even in the match day, is much better, is much improved. So this is providing actually a completely different experience in attendance to the stadium, and definitely is providing much more money that are generated by football companies. In terms of TV rights, of course, there was one issue before that is still there, but we are dealing with this. It's about the fact that TV rights were sold in the past like a block and were split between the different clubs, I mean, decided from a league point of view. Now, any club, even the smaller club, has the possibility of creating their own content. So there has been a transition of companies from pure football companies to media company. And this allowed many different kinds of clubs that were maybe not the most important one to generate their own content and to monetize this kind of content, creating a new additional source of revenues, even in the TV rights landscape. Finally, and most interesting, about the commercial part. Everybody had the possibility of seeing the main sponsor of the t-shirts. Everybody was grow with the t-shirt of the best player we preferred, with the main sponsor and the technical sponsor. And usually this kind of sponsorship went done, a lump sum basis. So the amount that was given was like granted to the company. Now the possibility of tracking exactly the fan base of the customers and the kind of preferences and the profiles of the customers allow even for a main sponsor, a technical sponsor, to definitely have a bigger value and to evaluate their investment. And of course, this is also creating a landscape of smaller sponsors that, even if are not the main one, can be actually monetized much better. But let's go to the main point. 20 years ago, football clubs were mainly organization driven by former players that in most of the cases were, allow me to say, not well prepared for managing the business behind football clubs. While now, of course, the situation is completely different. The situation is different because the capabilities of the football organization needed to change in order to manage this full potential. And as I mentioned before, football clubs move from their core business to become a media company. I see an additional future, an additional potential scenario in the future, because from media companies, they can now move to data company. And this is definitely fundamental because, as you know, the pattern, data, information, knowledge, there is the possibility, as long as they are able to grow the internal capabilities, to actually not just sell the data, but sell the knowledge. And this means absolutely being able to not only monetize, but having a far richer fan base all around the world. That is the real opportunity. Now, the biggest opportunity in general, not just for football, but for business, and I believe also, especially for Turkey, is about the fact that this kind of organization will not be able to build these capabilities in a very fast way just internally, and will need to create an ecosystem around them with capabilities of digital companies that will provide additional services, third-party services, to the football club's customer base. So why this is, I see this is a very important opportunity for Turkey, because Turkey is definitely much advanced in digital capabilities. They are much advanced in scaling from a startup to become a small, medium enterprise. And of course, also in terms of cost, there is definitely a point and an advantage. So I really believe that if a Turkish tech company manage, like they are already doing, to create an ecosystem with the clubs in Turkey, they will be able to scale at global level and to create an entire ecosystem of football, and not only football, but also sport, as we are mentioning, of organization that can become even much bigger than pure sport organization. And I see this as a clear opportunity for Turkey.
Thank you, Armando. So a quick question for you. Is there any other football players like you, which made a career change, and you are working on an international, very reputable company? Is there any other players like you, you know, some examples?
Yeah, I would say that, of course, it's not an easy path. There is somebody that now is studying while playing, because, of course, everybody now recognizes the importance of preparing yourself after the career, even if you do a very good career. Of course, there are still cultural issues at the beginning, so even before becoming a professional player. When I was playing in the youth team of Roma, the father and the mother were putting a lot of pressure on kids, and this is actually became a problem because they were focusing just on football rather than on education. Now the situation is different, and of course there are opportunities that are raising and that are increasing the interest of people to prepare themselves for the future. Personally, I'm also very committed in trying to promote these kind of activities, and I'm collaborating with the University La Sapienza in Rome in order to create a sort of academy for football players in order to upskill them and making them prepared for the future. Especially because as a former football player, having played in the youth team of Roma, I can say that I played 10 years in the youth team with Daniele De Rossi, that is a pretty prestigious player, but there is maybe somebody else that was good as well, that maybe is doing a normal job and maybe is even in trouble. So in terms of welfare, I think it's important to promote the culture of establishing your own capabilities, even if you are becoming a football player, in order that you make sure that if you become a football player, you can have a second career. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't become a football player, you can have a normal life like the others.
Yes, great. And you know, you have a very impressive academic background. So Armando is graduate from Sapienza Università di Roma. After he has a postgraduate program in University of California, San Diego, and Halt International Business School. He has a MBA degree. So thank you very much. It was a great speech. Ve şimdi sırada Paso Lig'in Türkiye.
Now we would like to pass the floor to the CEO of Paso Lig in Turkey. We have also other projects for the future. My dear friend, Ceyhun Kazancı. Ceyhun Kazancı. He is the CEO who managed the expansion of Paso Lig. He brought the company to a very impressive position. I remember from my time, Paso Lig became a financing resource at the most challenging times. And Paso Lig started properly using the audience data. It's not only the expenses in sports industry, but also for loyalty programs and banking transactions, bank transactions and financial transactions. It was a very combined project. You are one of the first examples of this in Turkey. Could you please tell us about the impact of this digital asset on sports clubs? Yes. We have to say that in 2014, when we first launched Paso Lig, there was a reaction from the fans, but it was one of the projects that was unanimously voted in by the parliament. So there was the government support behind it. So until 2021, now we have reached 5 million cards. And as you have mentioned, data is very important for the football industry, just like in all other industries. It has changed the whole story. And of course, in Turkey, things are a little bit complicated because when we say data, there is the law. And there is the law overseeing the sales platforms, the data ownership of the Football Federation of Turkey. But of course, we can have some projects about this. And as Armando mentioned, in football, one of the most important source of revenue is broadcasting, sponsorship, advertising, and matched game day revenues. Of course, you can still draw this revenue. And as Ural Bey mentioned, we have a significant amount of data. And more importantly, we need to use this with a vision with the sports clubs. And we need to use it in a way that will bring more revenues to the clubs. We have some projects about this. We have close contact with the football clubs. We have some successful and unsuccessful projects. But maybe we need to admit where we did the mistake. Before the panel, we had a chat with Burak. I was a bit excited because the most important thing is to be critical of ourselves. And the clubs and the individuals in these clubs do not see the importance of data. They don't understand how big an impact the data has over their business. We have talked about very exciting projects. Sometimes we will, of course, get revenues, returns from these projects. As the panelists mentioned, we have very interesting numbers. As Bora Bey mentioned, people, a sports club which fell out of the league brought 700,000 Turkish liras to Galatasaray. This could be 300,000 or 400,000. So of course there are always opportunities, and these revenues can be provided by the sponsors and advertisement also. And of course, when we compare it 25 years ago, now we can easily measure the money that comes from the sponsorship. We can see where we can get the returns. So this is a very good thing. And at Posulik, we every year we do a research. It's called EcoLig. We try to get a snapshot of the sports economy in Turkey, the condition of the revenues of sports clubs in Turkey. Last year, we did the 5th edition of this research, and broadcasting revenues, sponsorship, advertising revenues, and game day revenues, the ticket sales. We looked at all of these revenues, and in Turkey, we see that there is a total revenue of $5 billion in Turkish football industry. When we look at 20 years ago, the revenue was about 1/20 of this. The football economy is expanding dramatically, and it is one of the most important football leagues in the world. Of course, in abroad, we have some leagues which are worth about 7-8 million pounds. Of course, this has an effect on the value of the players. And of course, in Turkey, what does this mean? To increase these revenues, we need to leverage digitalization and the digital assets. Not only for these 3 categories of revenues, of course, they are very important, but we need to emphasize that the athletic success and the brand value, to improve this, you need to focus on athletic success. And to achieve athletic success, you need to use digitalization. Just like Armando mentioned, he said many clubs were managed by old players who didn't know the recent developments. Of course, we don't have many clubs in Turkey who can use digital data. They use the field. They use their experience in the field, and they use their experience about the industry, but we also need to use the performance data for the players, and we need to do the planning accordingly. And to wrap up, to increase these revenues in Turkey, we need to, just like all the panelists mentioned, we need to use data, digital assets. We need to have them at the center of our lives. Because if we resist this, we will fail, we will be doomed. The faster we adopt, the more successful we will be. Thank you very much for the contributions, Ceyhun. The huge expansion of the sports economy in Turkey, and he said he expects it to expand more with the digital assets. Now, we know that there will be a new era, and the sports clubs which do not adapt to this new era will lose. And now it's no more about selling tickets or jerseys. There will be other sources of income. We have different teams, Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, and we have a player called Falcao. And Falcao has more followers online than 3 football clubs combined. Now in the US, these will be included in the balance sheet as a digital asset. Now, maybe the panelists may have questions to each other, and also the members of the audience may have questions. We have 15 minutes, last 5 minutes. And Ceyhun Bey, in the beginning, he said when the match day revenues were lost in the beginning of the pandemic, clubs started taking different actions, but we didn't see any such action from the Turkish teams. Why? Well, we need to be fair. Some of the football clubs in Turkey placed pictures of their fans in the stadium, but they were slow to act. And also, if you don't have the data, you cannot contact the fans very quickly. Everyone had to lose some time trying to find a way of doing that. But when we look at the general revenues, we need to see that the digital revenues are much lower than the match game day revenues. So Turkish teams were not prepared for this. And I believe the European leagues were not prepared as well. Everyone saw this coming. Everyone knew digitalization was important, but they didn't know it would be so sudden. So they couldn't react very quickly. And yes, all around the world, in Premier League and in other leagues, there were actions. But when you combine all of them, these digital revenues were not very significant. And I have a question for you. I'm really curious about this. As Vural said, I'm a very esports player, actually. Since my childhood, I have been playing football on my PlayStation because I'm also in the industry. And the games have significantly developed also in 20 years. I'm curious, maybe I'm wrong, but we talk about esports. Football in esports. There are 2 big players, EA Sports and Konami. And football games constitute 2% of the total esports economy. And for example, League of Legends is not quite related to sports or footballs. And we have, what do you think about this 2%? Will it grow more in the future? What will happen? I'm sorry. These football games constitute about 5% of the total revenues in esports. There are various reasons for this, but I think this is mainly because of the low rating, low viewership of these sports. For example, when we often watch these games just like a game, and when a player hires, manages Paris Saint-Germain, they manage the actual Paris Saint-Germain, and the audience doesn't care about this. And in FIFA, there is a different mode, and you need to spend money to improve your team. So in esports, everything, all conditions should be equal. So if I'm joining an esports game via FIFA, and if I have spent a lot of money, a player who doesn't spend any money cannot beat me. There should be a justice. There should be justice. And in PUBG and Fortnite, it's not the case. You fight in equal conditions and the more skilled player wins. But of course, they have more fantastic settings. But most of the players around the world play mobile games such as League of Legends and FPS games such as PUBG Mobile, Fortnite, League of Legends, because the World Championship final of League of Legends was watched by 200 million people. This is comparable to international football games, actually.
Evet, artık biraz
Yes.
oturum kısmına geldik. Bir
Now
yorumu olan
we
var mı?
can start the Q&A. Any questions or comments from the audience?
Ona da soruyorum. Evet, şimdi yok gibi gözükürken Erol User.
I think Erol User,
Buyursunlar efendim.
former chairman of Fenerbahçe, has a question.
Gerçekten birçok panellerde aynı şeyler.
Really, in various sessions, we repeat the same things and we hear things that we already know about. But today, in this session, we heard many new things from the panelists. I would like to add one thing. When we talk about digitalization, it's all about culture. And when you look at the population in Turkey, it's a young population. And the Turkish people tend to own things. And I think because Turkish people own the football clubs that they support, I think there will be a future in this. And this is based on a culture. In Turkey, athletes are not on the boards of football clubs, but in Europe, in Bayern Munich, the players can be in the executive positions of the football team, football club. So in Turkey, we have a young and intelligent young generation, and I think they will help Turkey make a good progress in digitalization. Erol Usluer, thank you very much. He is one of the leader in blockchain technologies in Turkey. He recently published a book. He manages international projects, and he was the football branch manager of Rıdvan Dilmen.
Eyvah. Sen Türk futbolunu tasfiye etmişsin o zaman. Şimdi
Now,
tabii çok daha uzun
of course,
sohbet etmek isterdik ama zaman
we wish we could discuss this in more detail, but we have limited time. If you allow me, I have one question.
olan hepimizin çok sevdiği Godiva.
Godiva chocolates,
Godiva
one of the most important brands in the
benim de bir dostluğum olduğu için
world.
Premier Lig
Burak used to live in the UK, and I also lived there. I went to see the games in the Premier League. And what is the situation in the UK? Because the Premier League is the top of this business. You know, when you go to a game, there is a different atmosphere. How can you do that? You live there for a long time. Maybe you can share your experience with us.
Premier Lig bir kere
Well, the Premier League as a model is managed by very competent people. It is managed as a business model. It is not affected by political motivations. When I say political, I mean non-sports related concerns. And this did not happen overnight. There is a long process behind it. So when you manage the brand properly, when you take well-disciplined decisions and when you don't change your vision with each president, you always get positive outcomes. And with the digitalization, digital adaptation was more disciplined because of the management mentality. And the digitalization brought a new opportunity for these smaller leagues. Now smaller teams can create stories and they can bring their committees together more frequently, because in digitalization there is an abundance of stories. There are too many stories, but those clubs are trying to build interesting and successful stories. And in the Premier League, there is a discussion going on because the lower leagues may not be able to continue their operations because of the pandemic. And the Premier League had an issue like this. The investors, normally in the finance industry, the active investors have started buying teams. Their business discipline has an impact on the management of the clubs because they try to use more data when making decisions. They are more careful about managing the brand image. They are avoiding expenditures and recruitments that will risk their long-term sustainability. All of this requires significant discipline. This is what we are lacking in Turkey, actually, because the Premier League is the NBA of football, and the La Liga is also doing very important things in this area. But unfortunately, in digitalization, everyone in Turkey, as you know, in the past in Turkey, only people who could go to a game or who could have access to the team facility were interested in football. But now everyone is interested in the football. Now, so you shouldn't limit your business with 20, 25 people who can come and see your play in the come and see your game in the stadium. You should go beyond that, and the teams abroad are very successful in this. And in Turkey, if we are late in adapting to that, we will be doomed, because the teams in Europe are trying to create their own closed organizations to increase their revenues. And I think we need to change our way of thinking and do the same. And the sports clubs in Turkey, I can't believe them. If you start a stationery project shop, if you start a grocery business, you have to do a 10-year plan. But in Turkey, the teams don't do that. They only just, when a new management comes to the football club, it takes 6 months for them to understand how things go. And if they don't become the champion that year, a new administration, a new manager is elected, and everything is changed. Now, there is the clustering here now. There is the Sunderland documentary on Netflix. I think it's in Ligue 1. I think it's like Göztepe in Turkey. They are a very authentic club. They have a very significant revenue. And may I add something, Burak Bey? to Burak Bey about reaching the fans around the world. Actually, Galatasaray is already doing that. When we look at our data, we see that 60% of Galatasaray tokens are bought by fans abroad. The Turks living abroad, not only Turks, there are other sympathizers of Galatasaray in Japan, in Africa, in other countries. This is a very interesting data. And as I mentioned earlier, instead of just trying to reach 30,000 people, it's better to try to reach the people all around the world. I would like to add something. This is about your area, actually. There is a misunderstanding here. People have not understood the blockchain technology properly. Blockchain is a small component of the cryptocurrency technology, and it will have a significant impact on the football industry. And actually, we need to focus on blockchain. And data privacy in blockchain is very important. When you gather the data of your fans, you can also make profits using the data of your fans, and it can also help you build this system. And I have another opinion about the cryptocurrencies. Issuing cryptocurrency will be more valuable when you make it usable. For example, people are able to pay for jerseys or tickets using cryptocurrency, it will be more important. So you need to look at the big picture here. Yes, just like you mentioned, people are having difficulty in understanding this. When will we turn this into revenues? Barcelona did this actually. I think Milano is doing something better, because in Milano they have a Chinese investor. That's why. Last year, Hakan Bey brought an important economist, Mark Mobius, to this conference. He said the same thing. In Turkey and around the world, the finance is changing. We are talking about a different world. We talked about Bitcoin earlier, and in the economy, they say there is a boom, and I think there is some truth in it. I would like to thank all panelists for taking their time to join us. Despite the pandemic, we are also available, accessible online. People are watching us via Zoom. I would like to thank all panelists for sharing valuable information. So that's the end of our session.
We have our, thank you very much for this interesting subject. It was really interesting for me too. We'll have now the lunch break until 2 o'clock. So hope to see you at 2 p.m.